These are just examples of why we're personally so convinced that DeSci is going to be big.
Decentralized science, DeSci, is one of the newer yet faster growing crypto trends.
How do we decentralize scientific funding, for example, for research?
And Welshare Health, which I had the pleasure of sitting down with two of the leadership, is revolutionizing the medical side, the healthcare side of DeSci.
Patients can, first of all, have more control over their own health data.
Putting the individual back in control of their data.
Previously, patients couldn't really participate in the monetization process. And right now what we're building,
really own your data and monetize your data.
And then even monetize this contribution.
Watch today's whole interview as I ask them the tough questions. I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think doing anything in healthcare, you would have to be regulatory compliant. Thank you, Welshare, for being a channel partner. Like the video, and let's start, gentlemen, with your background.
My name is Murat. I'm coming from the medical background. I've been studying medicine for the last couple of years and working in healthcare in the Charité Medical University Hospital in Berlin, Germany. I found Bitcoin about 5 years ago, and I think blockchain was really interesting for me back then. I then came across the whole Ethereum ecosystem. I think this was kind of my pivot moment where I realized, okay, blockchain, especially all the things regarding smart contracts, zero knowledge proofs, is something that we can actually use in the healthcare and science industry. I then tried to combine my both passions for Web3 and decentralization with healthcare and science, and then came across around 2 years ago DeSci, so Decentralized Science. I was co-organizing the first Decentralized Science conference here in Berlin, and I was then talking to some of the participants and shared my idea back then, and this is actually the place where I met my future co-founder, Jock. And yeah, since then, we have been brainstorming and building the idea behind Welshare Health.
And Jock, what is your background and how do you find crypto?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been working in healthcare for the past decade. Originally studied chemical engineering, started out kind of in the pharmaceutical manufacturing space as an engineer. Went back to do my master's degree in chemical engineering with a focus on pharma, and particular pharma manufacturing. Instead of going into the engineering route, ended up doing an MBA because I was like really passionate about the overall healthcare space. After my MBA, went to life science consulting, where we did strategy consulting for the big pharma and medtech companies. And then it's kind of interesting, actually, during my time in consulting, I took a week of vacation. And of course, I had heard about crypto and just like many other people, hadn't really gotten into it, just kind of had it in the back of my head. And then on my week of vacation, actually a family friend initiated a conversation. He was day trading crypto in the kitchen. And I thought this was, okay, interesting, kind of seemed more like gambling to me, but everyone has their strategy. So I was like, okay, I respect that. Later on, we kind of talked a little bit more. He started introducing me to the concept of NFTs, and I was like, okay, but like, what's the actual value behind these monkey pics? And so apart from like all the speculation, I was like, okay, but there must be like, what's the value behind it? There must be some actual value. So I didn't actually have time to like get deeper into it because returning back after vacation to my consulting job, just work-life balance didn't work out. But then after my consulting gig, I went into a digital health manager role at a top 10 pharma company. And there, I had a little bit of extra time, after work, and started researching and understanding like, okay, so these are like the actual benefits of Web3, and this is why decentralization is actually useful. And because healthcare obviously is my passion, it was like very obvious that I was thinking, okay, what are the first needs in healthcare that we can apply this to? And this was also around the time where I started doing some more research, found probably more randomly online, some articles about DeSci, decentralized science. Saw this invitation to the very first DeSci Berlin conference. I thought it was interesting. I headed over there, and as Murat explained, that's actually where we ended up meeting. And it's just really great to see, how how the space has grown since then, and how so many valuable projects are actually flourishing. But that's kind of a little bit to my background.
Well, DeSci, decentralized science, to me, very new trend. It's like I understand AI is a trend, gaming is a trend, RWA deep in. DeSci, I don't know, it's so new. Would you guys go over exactly why DeSci is significant, and also what exactly Welshare is for somebody who's never heard of it?
Sure, I can introduce the DeSci concept and then I'll hand it over to Murad. So essentially, DeSci, which stands for Decentralized Science, is the holistic application of blockchain technologies in the broader science field. Currently, the majority of the projects working in DeSci are working in healthcare applications and medical research applications. And this covers areas from how do we decentralize scientific funding, for example, for research. There's a whole array of very interesting projects working on specifically underfunded research areas that typical pharma companies wouldn't necessarily touch in their mainstream portfolios, just because the incentives are so misaligned in the entire ecosystem. And so, decentralizing the system actually enables a whole new spectrum of use cases that now align, or much closer align, the individual contributors within that ecosystem to be incentivized to actually participate. And I'll hand it over to Maura to explain kind of more in detail about what it is that we're doing at Welshare.
Yeah, sure. So Welshare, in a nutshell, is a decentralized application that connects patient communities across the globe directly with medical research companies, and especially in the medical AI industry. And we are doing it by building an app where you can fully personalize which information you want to share with whom, and even decide the purpose of the health data sharing. So basically, you can even decide whether you want to contribute to medical research, specifically for a certain therapeutic area, like diabetes in our case. So we are starting in a diabetes space as a proof of concept. However, we are building like Welshare to be therapeutic agnostic. So we are seeing the value of underfunded medical research in some kind of form, and health data sharing, I think, is one of the most relevant use cases in the whole decentralized science ecosystem. And the idea is that patients can first of all have more control over their own health data, and then on the second step, decide which information they share, and then even monetize this contribution and be rewarded for doing so. And we're doing it in a kind of decentralized way. So in the traditional Web2 system, it wasn't really possible to incentivize kind of patients and research organizations to be involved in this process.
I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think doing anything in healthcare, you would have to be regulatory compliant. There'd be a lot of safety regulations to get through. Is that the case? And how do you have them?
Yeah, absolutely. So of course, everything that we do needs to be regulatory compliant, and I think that's one of our main pillars of how we're building things and how we've structured our ecosystem that we're building around. So when it comes to health data, there are, and obviously there's like major regional differences depending on where you are in the world. In the US, we have HIPAA. In Europe, for example, one of the earliest considerations we actually had was around GDPR. GDPR has, for example, this rule that's essentially it's the right to be forgotten. So if
what is GDPR?
GDPR is Europeans' general regulation on data protection rights. And so essentially, there's a clause within GDPR that says you have the right to be forgotten, which means that any user within the EU, within the European Union, who is using a service, for example, a tech service, any of the big tech companies, for example, and let's say I want to delete my profile, or I want to have a certain part of my profile deleted. Within the European Union, I as a resident have that right to do so. So the tech company actually has to be able to do that. And building in decentralized systems, you can see that like if you look at IPFS like file storage systems, that's not quite as intuitive as it would be in the Web2 world, because you can't just magically force the data to be unpinned, right? It's not a centralized entity that has all control over it. So one of the main really elements of what we're building is bridging the gap of what exists currently in terms of Web3 technology, but of course under the regulatory umbrella of what is actually possible and legal at the moment, right? And we see a lot of interesting projects come along kind of as we're building this as well, who are working on for example this GDPR issue, but also just in general like all of the other healthcare specific regulatory questions that you just implied.
Rod, let me ask you this. Just like I believe, just like the early internet days, 99% of the projects won't make it. The quality ones will make it. What is your growth strategy to go at? Are you going after the offices to get the clients as a B2B, or is it B2C, get them on the app, then get the offices? What is the growth plan?
Yeah, great question. So in our case, it is a mixed model. It is a B2B, B2C model. So on the one hand, we have the B2C clients, we call them users. So it can be patients and can be enthusiasts. It can be even crypto guys who just want to contribute to medical research using our app. So we have B2C in this case. So we are working right now on the application, and we will also release in the later phase a premium version. So some of the revenue streams will come from that. The whole idea is that basically for the whole process where you connect patients directly with medical research companies, we as Welshare, we will get a small percentage of the cut of the health data transaction in some kind of form. And you can think about it as like previously, patients couldn't really participate in the monetization process. And right now what we're building is an ecosystem where you can decide whether you want to participate. So beforehand, patients received literally zero, and they weren't in control over it, and they weren't really in the driver's seat. And right now what we are doing, they can, for example, one access of an oncology data set, for example, in the US costs around $1,000. And you can imagine how it's possible to scale this up, as there are a lot of different medical research companies, such as pharma companies and such as medical AI companies interested in those data sets. And how many patients do you need to start a clinical trial? So this is around 10,000, not even more. So there are a lot of different use cases. The market is actually big. So our specific use case is valued at $600 billion yearly market cap. And this is something that we're currently working on. And on the other side, coming back to your question, the medical research companies can then, we are also working on a so-called B2B dashboard. So to get access to the specific information, for example, regarding clinical trial recruitment, so getting patients on board for a new medication. And if a pharma company, for example, decides to develop a new drug, they need patients, and filtering the relevant patients that are fitted the best for this specific clinical trial is kind of a hazard. And so we are basically building this B2B platform where pharma companies, for example, can do clinical trial recruitment much faster by filtering all the possible inclusion and exclusion criteria to get the right patients.
Jock, question for you. And maybe this is an odd question, but you mentioned like diabetes. That's one of the things you're focusing on initially. How big could DeSci be? How big could Welshare be? Do you think that this has the potential to solve diabetes in the long run or cure cancer? That's actually, forget that part. That's overplayed. But how big? What is the potential of having something like this?
Yeah, great question. So short answer is, in our humble opinions, it's going to be very, very big. If you just look at the existing healthcare market today, it's obviously multi-trillion-dollar industry. And I think we see that because of all the issues that we listed, when it comes to data silos, when it comes to misalignment of incentives of all the different very complex healthcare stakeholders, you just see that, there is the need for decentralization. So, just put those two together. And, from our perspective, it's quite clear that, over time, as, more awareness for the space grows, you just mentioned it earlier in our call, like even the term DeSci, decentralized science, is still very new. But I think when we, just maybe a personal anecdote, when we go to conferences, we were just most recently at Token 2049.
I was there too.
Yeah, exactly. So just talking to people, and explaining the use case in healthcare, it's as soon as people understand it and it clicks, it's just very obvious, right? It's like it's a no-brainer. This is one of the use cases that blockchain technology is actually useful for, right? When we're talking about what Murad was alluding to earlier, like one of the reasons why Web3 is so powerful is because now we unlock use cases that aren't possible in the Web2 world. So whether that's contributing data in an anonymized way, truly anonymized, where it's not just only de-identified personal data, but it's actually truly anonymized, via blockchain technology, or you take it a step further and you say, okay, but in the Web2 system, I can still anonymize my data, and I can still earn reward points. But now the question is, like, the moment you want to turn on monetization, well, here you have the Web2 problem of, okay, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to connect to my bank account or my credit card or whatever it is. And then you just have that risk of re-identifying that information. So that's not useful. And then like the third pillar that, I see as, extremely valuable in the broader Web3 space, why I think DeSci is going to be big, is other blockchain technologies such as, ZK proofs. So if we take it a step further, not only like in the future, I'm not going to have to share my data with you, or the medical or whoever it might be. What we can do now instead with ZK proof technology actually is, okay, so I have my data, it's on-prem, maybe on my phone, wherever it might be, wherever I want it to be stored, whatever I feel comfortable with. And let's say you're a researcher and you're investigating a specific use case. We just mentioned diabetes, so let's go with that one. Let's say, for example, you're a researcher and you're interested in understanding of 1,000 type 1 diabetes patients that are of the age between 25 and 45 that have, certain exclusion and inclusion criteria. What is the risk of getting heart failure in the next 10 years and being hospitalized due to that, right? This would be a typical question we would want to ask in research. So now, instead of there being these middlemen and aggregating all the data from different sources, from hospitals, from other middlemen healthcare sources, now what we can do is you just write an algorithm that essentially asks that research question. The algorithm runs over my data and the 999 other patients' data and outputs the result, right? Without you actually having to see it. And then we tie a bow onto it by allowing the ZK proof to tell you, no, you know what, this is actually valid. You can trust this result. So these are just examples of why we're personally so convinced that DeSci is going to be big, is because it essentially realigns a lot of the problems and a lot of the stakeholders that we have in the healthcare system by using these blockchain technologies that now can unlock new use cases. And that's really where we see the value in it.
And Murad, yes, go on.
No, yeah, I just wanted to maybe add one other thing that obviously comes to mind is, big, like, is DeSci going to be big? That can be measured in many different ways. But I think one of the things that we see already of, like, this is not just a dream. This isn't just, let's say a few hundred people in the little DeSci bubble thinking that, this is going to change the world. But we actually see like big names, right? We see people like CZ, Brian Armstrong, right? Who also who co-founded DeSci project himself, right? So we see these big names come into the space. And I think it's just a matter of time by creating awareness. So that's why I also thank you to you, right, for allowing us to be here with you and sharing this with your audience, because I think awareness is maybe the one ingredient that's missing to unlock the huge potential of DeSci.
I appreciate you guys sharing your time. And on Welshare specifically, what is the use case of the token, Murad?
Sure. There are two main use cases of the token. If we look at the B2C side of things, the token basically unlocks the premium version of the application. And now the question, okay, what does the premium version of the application do? So basically, in our system, patients, users, they collect points that we call sherries. And those sherries, they can be exchanged for different things. So for example, the most obvious thing is monetary rewards. So you can exchange those sherries at specific milestones for stable coins, for fiat, and even for other interesting things. For example, as discounts with our third-party provider programs in the healthcare space. With a premium version, you can then exchange those sherries in a much faster pace. This is one of the benefits. And to unlock the premium version, you need to hold the WELL token. One of the additional use case on the B2C side of things is that by holding the token, you can also unlock different, based on the health data that you provide in our platform, you can then be directed to other platforms, other stakeholders, or other applications. For example, in the diabetes space, right now what we're working is we are partnering with manufacturer companies, so with CGM device manufacturers, and basically exchanging those sherries to get for example, free CGM device in a country where people can't really afford it. I think this is something that we're also working on the altruistic side of things. On the B2B side, you need the WELL token to power the whole B2B platform. So everything that I've mentioned before regarding clinical trial recruitment, everything can only be accessed by holding the WELL token and extracting basically the data from it. And we also understand that big pharma companies and medical AI companies, I mean, they are still not there yet to really use all the fun and amazing Web3 stack, such as wallets and all the things. And that's why we're still choosing a Web 2.5 pathway where we are still using Web3 technology, but trying to make the user experience, or like in our case, the B2B experience, as easy as possible. So on the example of the pharma company, they still can log in using an email address, and they still can purchase and access the platform with fiat currency, for example. However, like all the token side of things are abstracting into the backend, and this is something that we're working on. So these are basically the two main utilities of the token.
I think that's smart going to Web 2.5, because that's, I think, how you're going to get true adoption. As we wrap up, as we look into 2025, what else does the audience need to know? What's on the roadmap for next year? To either of you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently we're in the process of testing our user app in a closed beta with the first 100 diabetes patients. And I think what's really relevant here is the fact that, what we're doing is, because it's decentralized and because we believe in, the Web3 ecosystem actually being powerful enough to take on some of these major actors, what we want to do is build as much bottom up as possible. So, early on, we started with, by creating co-creation workshops together with, the various diabetes communities and their advocacy groups to ensure that, we're not just building something in the space that, the two of us and the rest of our team might love, but, it wouldn't be relevant for the rest of, the diabetes community. So as we're extending, the invitations into this closed beta, which we'll be doing in the following months, we'll be growing and receiving more feedback that we can build into to essentially make the app more powerful. And then probably as we head into the new year, be able to fully release an open beta of our app for the broader adoption for everyone to test and use. At the same time, what we'll be doing in Q1 of next year then also is further developing our B2B platform, which will then allow medical research organizations to come in and for us to actually be able to facilitate these transactions between the various patient communities and then the medical research side. So that's kind of on product side what we're really looking forward to. Apart from that, of course, I think one of our main endeavors also is, to, as I was alluding to earlier, is to bring awareness to the broader Web3 space when it comes to DeSci, decentralized science, to ensure that we reach as many people as possible when it comes to just sharing information, to sharing what it is that we're up to, and in particular what we're doing, but also just like the broader DeSci space, because we're personally very convinced that there's apart from us also very valuable projects within the ecosystem that people should be aware of. So that's on the Web3 side, and then of course on the Web2 side, further partnering with patient communities and advocacy groups to ensure that, so for example, we have like this diabetes advocate ambassador program that we're running that allows different leaders within the diabetes communities to engage with their communities. They receive ambassador points for that. So from a go-to-market perspective, also scaling on the Web2 side, which coincidentally has the effect that inadvertently we bring in Web2 people into the Web3 ecosystem without them even necessarily needing to understand, what is blockchain and how does it work? Because like as Morgan was saying earlier, what we're building is, this Web 2.5 system where, okay, we have the wallet abstracted in the back end. So any regular diabetes users who come in can sign in with their, accustomed email address and password, and have the wallets and Web3 technologies abstracted into the back end. So yeah, from those perspectives, we're very excited. A lot of things ahead of us, but it's what's really powering us is to see that there's such great community spirit, and just having conversations with people, see that there's actually real use case behind this. So that's very empowering.
I love it, guys. I feel I have such a better understanding of DeSci in general and Welshare, of course, from this conversation. Thank you for joining me. Final thoughts from both of you.
Yeah, I think we are still pretty early. I think DeSci is going to be evolving in the next couple of years in terms of the number of DeSci projects building in the space. I think, as Chuck already mentioned, raising awareness is something for us really important. So in the Web3 ecosystem, so people heard about DeSci and understand kind of the basic principles of decentralized science, how we can use blockchain, how we can basically have a direct impact on the society. And I think this is something that really motivates me to build Welshare. And I think this was like one of the main reasons I've started in the first place. So maximizing my impact on society with blockchain, with Web3, with healthcare, I think this is kind of the way to go for me.
Yeah, for me, I'd say last words and call to action to also the audience would be, if any of this is interesting to you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're obviously extremely busy, but we always try to find the time for a community. Give us a follow, look around what other DeSci projects there are, what else the space has to offer. If you're interested in working with us in any way, whether that's, contributing to medical research, or perhaps, you have a specific use case outside of diabetes that we could be tapping into, in the near future, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We're here for the long run. So just really excited to be building here together with the community. Thank you.